Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's edition of Ramola Reports. I'm very happy this morning to be here once more with Jeff Godwin, whom probably everyone's got to know pretty well from our regular podcasts. Jeff Godwin is a filmmaker. He lives in London. He has degrees from the London International Film School. He's created documentaries of various kinds, including Naomi's Story and Max Does Westminster. And he's currently running a really interesting campaign called Campaign for Decency. And it's covering a few different focuses. And perhaps we'll talk to him today a little bit more about what the Campaign for Decency is all about, what it's accomplished so far, where it's headed, and, who is being included under its umbrella. So good morning, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
It's always a pleasure. Good morning, Ramola. You should have probably added, perhaps all the audience is sick of seeing, but I hope that again, we're going to talk about some more stuff that's going to end up in the media a couple of days later, because it seems to be not bigging ourselves up, but a lot of the stuff that we discuss kind of hits the zeitgeist at the same time. So let's see.
That is very interesting, and I have certainly noticed that, and it's rather extraordinary.
I loved your term, curve modulation, modulating the curve. I think that's perfect for a term.
Modulating the curve of current affairs without even intending to, apparently, or perhaps somewhat intentionally, because our intention is indeed to shake up things and put the information out there and, create change in the world. Good change, right?
Absolutely. And to that end, let's just let me mention, if I may, on the 7th of February, Wednesday at 12 o'clock is going to be, I hope, the biggest demonstration protest highlighting and exposing organized stalking in the United Kingdom outside the Houses of Parliament. We've been very successful so far. We've had reactions, we've had more, exponentially, the people have been growing, the number of people have been growing that have been turning up. This Wednesday, a shout out to Andrea from Wales, who's coming all the way from Wales. We've got Liz, who's coming down from Newcastle. She's paying £100 to spend the night in a hotel in London. Spoke with her today on the phone. We've got Olivia, Belinda, Tom, Martin. A lot of people are coming down, people that are fed up with this. And I can say that it's going to be a momentous occasion on Wednesday, because on Wednesday the 7th, the British police are going to have plausible deniability removed from them, because on Wednesday we are going to go to New Scotland Yard after having demonstrated outside the Houses of Parliament, and I am going to formally hand in, signed by everybody there, a document saying we are reporting organised stalking, that any type of scheme that the police are running, the Prevent scheme, which perhaps we can talk about a wee bit, is being abused, that colour sensitization is being used, people's houses are being broken into, thuggish behaviour is going on, stalking, psychological terror tactics, ambulance sirens. All of the audience know what's going on. We are going to tell them, so we're going to remove 2 of their defences, one of which is we don't know, we're going to tell them, and second, we didn't know these private contractors, we thought they were just carrying out surveillance to save the British taxpayer money. A momentous occasion on Wednesday the 7th, the British police at New Scotland Yard, the highest overt symbol of the police in the United Kingdom, are going to be told organised stalking is going on. Not that they don't know, but they are going to be told. It's going to be filmed, it's going to be recorded, it's going to be addressed to Cressida Dick, who is the head of the police, overtly, and it's going to be removed for them. So no more in the future, when they start to say, when this goes sideways, as it's already starting to look like it is, they're not going to be able to say, we didn't know. We knew these beefed up neighbourhood watch schemes were running, but we had no idea there was also criminality and psychological terror tactics being used.
Hmm.
That's going on the Wednesday the 7th. They're losing that.
That's absolutely important for people to hear. I'm so glad that so many people have contacted you and many people are coming forward to join you at this demo, Jeff, because as you say, I think you're kind of driving home for all of us the importance of kind of gathering together and making our presence felt in front of these places of so-called power, the places where, of government, really, your current government, which is Parliament, and now the police as well. And this carries on from something we spoke about, I think, before the new year. We were talking about the importance of actually informing the police and trying to get that portion of the police which isn't perhaps, or hopefully isn't, part of the Masonic setup within our police stations and police departments to respond and to begin to connect with humanity on the ground here and start acting for people.
Yeah, I mean, you have it's somewhat, I think, from my point of view, less altruistic, because although we want to reach good police, I think it's trying to get them to act in their own self-interest, and I think they're heavily relying on plausible deniability with this, because we're starting to see now that they're talking about these beefed up. There was a David Icke linked to an article in the Telegraph and in the Guardian about these new volunteer, highly sensitive volunteer groups that are counter-intelligence and counter-terrorism, and they're just muppets from like the local neighbourhood that they're dressing up and giving them all these types of powers. So we're starting to see the curve modulation again, how we're influencing how the intelligence community is acting. They are seeing that the lid's breaking off the organised stalking, that it's really too difficult for them to contain this, because as exponentially they're targeting more people, which they have to because we're informing more people. This is growing now, so they've got to try and sanitize it and say, well, okay, it's counter-terrorism, it's a new volunteer force. And I think they're going to rely on that heavily, the higher ups, which is why we're going to say to them that they've got a duty of care, that we're saying that the intelligence is compromised. Obviously, we know that because we're targets, but that we're going to remove from the police the fact that if they start to say, well, we didn't know what they were doing, we gave them this money to carry out this contract, we thought they were just doing covert surveillance. Well, we're going to tell them exactly what they're doing. I'm going to list it and say, this is what they're up to, this is what you're facilitating, and this is what you are funding. But again, curve modulation, the organized stalking, there's too many videos now, there's too many talking about this, it's too reasonable. People have difficulty perhaps taking on the nanotech and the Jews, the directed energy weapons, but I think nobody has difficulty believing that people could suffer organized stalking, especially the way that our countries are going now. And I think they're trying to cover their asses by saying, oh yeah, it's this new volunteer counter-terrorism force, which is called PREVENT. And perhaps we can talk about that, because never has it ever been so clearly officialized,
Yes,
organized stalking. If you read the websites, it's insane.
absolutely, Jeff. I think what you've brought up at this point in time is something that's actually very vital for everybody in all of our countries really need to understand, that when you encounter information on the web about gang stalking or organized stalking, this is not a made-up story. It's not delusion. It is absolute fact. It is absolutely going on. And more people who are well educated, who are very aware, who are not in the slightest bit delusional, because you see, that's how the cover-up has been affected by mainstream media putting out defamatory, libelous, and slanderous articles, naming every reporting victim of these ghastly crimes delusional, paranoid, schizophrenic, schizoid, and a huge cover-up operation working with psychiatry. And this is the use of political psychiatry in our nations at this point. And isn't that interesting? In the West, political psychiatry in the West, rampant, just like it was in the days of the Soviet Union and the KGB. But now it's over here. It's over here in Europe, it's over here in UK, and it's here in the US. Political psychiatry is about naming people delusional for any reason under the sun that, is convenient to the so-called authorities. They don't
Yeah.
want to hear your voice. They don't want you to speak out. They don't want other people to hear your voice. They don't want you to have any influence in the marketplace of free ideas, a so-called free marketplace of ideas, right? And so they suppress and repress you through these means, and they're doing it through the collusion of psychiatrists. So that aspect is going on. And that's why people don't know about gang stalking and organized stalking. So part of what you are doing is really bringing this phenomenon into public view, and you are reifying and changing the conversation. You are bringing the information forward and asking people, look at this information again. Let's look, for instance, at this program called Prevent, which has now been reported, as you sent that article to us about, in the Guardian, right? It's been reported in the Guardian. It's probably been reported elsewhere in Britain, and it is. But, well, let's talk about that, Jeff. You have a great idea about what that program is. Tell us what that program is, what it's doing, and why it's so insidious.
Well, it's given us an in, because in the last week we've been able to go. When I've spoken about control orders, which we have in the United Kingdom, which allows a very robust level of surveillance, right? Surveillance on human beings in the United Kingdom. Theresa May, who's unfortunately our Prime Minister, and she signed 3,500 of these. But in 2015, there were only 50 arrests for terrorism. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. But Prevent is something now that's meant to counter radicalization. Now, they're very keen, and it also had a name called, as well as Contest, Prevent, but these new schemes, because what's happening is that we are changing the narrative, because people like you and I and other people are coming across, hopefully, as quite cogent and saying that this organised stalking is going on. And so they're having a hard time marginalising people like ourselves. That doesn't mean they haven't tried. I've been referred, I'm very proud to say, twice in 6 months, I was referred to a mental health unit by my MP that I approached, and a lovely man that I approached, and said to him, you do know that this is going on, and he very kindly, I had a phone call from a mental health professional who called me up and said, hello, I'm just introducing myself, you're a new client. And I was, really? Are you doing market research for, Fortnum and Masons or Harrods? No, actually, I'm from the mental health unit. Oh, really? Yes, you're on our books now. I just wanted to say hi before you come in for the interview.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, really? But these things don't faze me at all. And I said, oh, fantastic. And after kind of talking to her for 30 minutes, she apologized profoundly and wrote to the MP, and then got back to me and said, you know who it was that referred you? And I was like, what? It was like the office of Jim Fitzpatrick. And yes, I did name him, because Mr. Fitzpatrick, I have the email where you apologize for having done that. So yeah, they're all, yeah, it is, and they're all up to it. But to get back to what we were saying, it's given us an in now, because I've got video. Martin, a great friend of mine, activist, he filmed. He went up to a policeman and said, "Have you heard of the Prevent?" And they all have. Okay, right. And he said, "Have you heard about organised stalking?" And the policeman said, "I have heard of the strategy." And I'm going to be uploading that video of the British police saying,
Brilliant.
They've heard of organised stalking, they're aware of the strategy, and they are all aware of this Prevent program, which is meant to counter radicalisation. Now, I urge anyone who does research on this to go to the websites. If you just type in Prevent, Contest, counter intelligence, it'll come up on Google. There's lots of mainstream articles about it now. If you read those and you see the criteria, I had a policeman, a friend of mine, who I forwarded this to my friend and said, "Have you heard of this?" And he wrote back and he said, "Do you know, Jeff, I match all the criteria." He said, that I'm on this, and apparently they've referred 7,000 people onto this scheme. 7,000 people are now, and the P and the Prevent stands for pursue.
Wait a minute. When you say 7,000 people have been referred onto the scheme, who are these people? Are
The
you talking
prevent
about
scheme.
people who are
People
being
that they've
targeted and
actually
surveilled?
referred.
Sorry?
Yeah, people that have been referred anonymously to the team who they think are in danger of radicalization.
Ah, okay,
There's
that's it. Yeah, those are the targeted then. Those are being people who are being targeted.
400 they are admitting have gone on for um, further scrutiny, and they are complaining, the people who run the scheme, about why so small amount of people have been put on for further scrutiny. Now, if they're saying 400 people, I would say that per person, you're looking at a minimum of 50 community-based agents, up to 1,000 for each one of those 400. But just go and look at the criteria. It is Orwellian. It is Stasi-esque. Look into the prevent scheme. Look at the criteria they are using to identify people. It's people who are going in the menopause. It's middle age. They're saying if someone that's at a change, a point of their life where there's a change, puberty, menopause, they're saying that you are vulnerable to radicalization. It is insane.
Yes, and you know, it's also very insidious because I think in that first article I read, they had a few examples of people who really benefited from this kind of community intervention, and who I think made some statements about if I hadn't had this program, if I hadn't had somebody to report to, my life would have been in danger or something like that. You know, people who are sort of suicidal as well. So I think perhaps they're mixing it up a little bit. They're muddying the waters, right? They're bringing in people who
Excellent.
perhaps may have mental health issues, mixing
And
them in with others.
they're also recruiting perps through it, because what they're doing is, I've noticed that my targeting changed for about a last year, where predominantly young, perhaps one can say Muslim males, I live in a very predominantly Muslim area, they've started to use. So perhaps these people that they think are going to be radicalized, whatever, they're actually going to them and recruiting them to take part in the actual perping, because predominantly now the perps
Very
are from a different ethnic background than myself. Now, this is wonderful for the security services, because they can accuse me of racism, they can accuse me of being Islamophobic, if I start to point out that predominantly the people that seem to be following me around Tower Hamlets, which is predominantly a Muslim area, which I have no problem with. But again, and there's a lady who's on my estate who's heavily targeted, and they are labeling terms at her of being a racist, because she's pointing out that, you know, there are predominantly people from a different ethnic background to her are involved in the stalking. So when she mentions this, the first thing they say is, what do the people look like? And she obviously points to their ethnic, their
desire.
origins,
Oh,
and the
oh.
person saying, "Oh gosh, are you racist? Are you into all of this?"
Yeah, it's
Now,
being set up to be divisive, apparently. It's being set up to really, you know, rip communities apart.
yeah, again, and again, it always brings me back to the wonderful clip in the Doctor No, excuse me, in From Russia with Love, which is one of the James Bond films. When James Bond goes in and he's talking to the guy from Spectre, right? And you've got the two Chinese fighting fish that are fighting each other, and the guy from Spectre says, "What we want," and the cat kind of puts his paw in and eats the winner, and he says, "Well, yeah, this is." What we do is Spectre, we pit people against each other, so they completely exhaust each other, fighting each other, and once there's one left standing, then we go in and kind of eat them. And that's been divide and conquer, as being the great British strategy, the
The
intelligence
British,
strategy.
I was going to say, that's the British have been doing that for more than a century, right? I mean, this is what they did in India, this is what they did in Iraq. They did it all
Yeah.
over the world. That's the sort of how the British Empire ran its business.
Which is why we have got to be so careful about, within the TI community, if there is a community, of being aware. You know, they want us to all attack each other. They
Yeah.
want us all you know, like now the things there's a lot of online hating of Christians in the TI community. There's a lot of calling people names and so on and so forth, and we just have to be above that, because divide and conquer is always the go-to strategy for these people.
Absolutely. Jeff, I sent you a little message by chat if you want to take a little look. It has to do, if you want to just adjust your camera a little bit, you're a little bit out of the frame. Um, you know, maybe come back to the middle because we're sort of seeing just a part of you. Yeah, there we go.
Is
We
that
see more of the door rather than you, so much better now, much better. Yeah.
yeah, you can see the silver foil over my window. I'm not lying, I genuinely am a TI.
No, trust me, the foil, we can't get away from it. We need it all around us. This room is covered in foil. If I showed people the state of this room, they'd be horrified. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so absolutely. So the Prevent program is a rather insidious program, it seems like. On the one hand, you know, this is how they've set up these programs, countering violent extremism, countering, you know, trying to catch people who are on the brink of becoming radicalized. We are intervening. We are stopping people from becoming radicalized. You know, jihadis going off to join ISIS, etc. And through that means, as you say, they are targeting young people, young teenagers who are smart and speaking out, perhaps. Um, Women going into menopause who are not holding back regarding their speaking out, and men.
Mm.
I think women and men in those ages and years are particularly outspoken, and they should be. Um, but it's this, these are the two target ages, it seems like, the teenage and young 20s perhaps, and then you have the people in their 40s and 50s and 60s who are being targeted as well. And then the
Yeah.
elderly, right? The elderly. So it's very odd. It's
Yeah.
but this particular program, countering violent terrorism or whatever, violent extremism, is being aimed at people in communities who actually do have backbone, spine, integrity, are working for causes, are speaking out, whether it's, you know, about getting clean water in their neighborhoods or talking about community action, getting together and doing something in their communities or whatever. These people are being targeted and being named as troublemakers, as we know, you know.
Mm.
So from covering so many cases of this nature, both in the US and the UK. So it's horrifying. Now, is your campaign for decency connected with Prevent?
Well, what we're doing is it's giving us, you know, because the targeted individual phenomenon deliberately is an asymmetrical weapon. So getting hold of it to present it to anybody, it's deliberately like, you know, trying to hold water. So having a name as an icebreaker where we can go up to law enforcement. I'm working with a lady now who's going to be having a court case in March, and I'm advising her now to talk with her solicitor to actually ask the judge outright, because she's reporting quite severe harassment in the community on the estate where I live, and I've said to her to tell her solicitor to ask if she's on this scheme, because if she is, then all of a sudden it legitimizes so much of what she's saying. And it also, another name, see, I'm often going on about MI5 and I'm often going on about the police, but the other two names, obviously this is a hydra-headed beast, but the Home Office, the British Home Office and GCHQ, but particularly the Home Office, is something that we're going to be focusing on even more, because Prevent, a lot of these neighbourhood watch schemes, supposedly called watch schemes, are actually being run by the Home Office, and that's kind of outside really the here today gone tomorrow political class. So the Home Office is something that we're going to be focusing on after the 7th, because we believe that if there's one body perhaps that we could look at that understands and knows about these types of schemes, it's the Home Office. So yeah, that's something we're going to be looking at after the 7th, not just Parliament. Again, Catherine gave a great suggestion about the Royal Courts of Justice and informing the High Court judges that I've had a lot of experience with. I've been in the High Court 13 times in the last 20 years. And I've spoken to many High Court judges, and I can tell you they don't suffer fools gladly. and I can't, I would, I mean, again, it's very speculative, but I would say perhaps out of 5, 2 are okay.
Interesting. Yes, I think you have to cover all bases, the Home Office, the courts of justice, and the police stations, etc. So I think, it sounds like with the police stations, you're doing the plausible deniability focus. You're giving them
Yeah.
information so that they cannot profess lack of knowledge.
As you said, the curve modulation that's going on is that, we spoke about secret societies, and then all of a sudden, secret societies in the police comes out. We highlighted Damien Green, and then he's kind of removed the same day, and now we're starting to talk about the nanotech, the nanobiotech that's in us, and you're getting attacked. And a lot of people that are saying, well, actually, this is far more pervasive than anybody previously thought. The amount our bodies are polluted by this stuff. People saying that now are being attacked yourself, particularly because this is what they don't. Because then it brings everybody into the fight, Ramola, doesn't it? It brings everybody in. If you know your pets, your kids have got this stuff in them, then nobody's on the sidelines anymore, which is why they're so keen to attack the implants. Because when people think about implants, they think about, kind of things like this big, the RFID kind of chip things. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about something completely, those things exist, but what we're talking about is this pervasive, very, very invasive neurotechnology that's been put into the hydrosphere, that's been put into with the chemtrailing, that's basically completely polluted the human organism. Now, when it gets out, how everybody, I think, my particular, and it is speculative, it's hard to prove this, but my personal opinion, speaking on behalf of myself, is that I believe everybody has, to some level, has this nanotech in them, these microbiosensors, this smart dust. I think we're all
It's not
polluted
just an
by this.
opinion, Jeff. The aerosols are raining down on all of us. The water supply is something that we're all using, you know?
Yeah,
So we're breathing the same air. So if there's
yeah.
nanobiosensors, in those chemtrails, which there are from some of the documents that we're digging up and that we are
It makes
finding out about,
Doesn't it make complete sense? If you were in the intelligence agencies and you wanted full spectrum dominance, you wanted a way to beat any type of encryption, you wanted complete control, this makes total sense. And if they hadn't thought about this before we mentioned it, I think they're thinking, bloody hell, that's an amazing idea. Because it clearly is the way these people think. It's clearly the future. It's their control grid. And that's why it's such a big hot potato, because they want to marginalize us and think that it's just us, right? But all it is the tech in us has gone live, but it's in
yes,
everybody.
yes, very, very important issues. And perhaps I should clarify for those people who may not know what we're talking about regarding the furor over microchip implants is that, Jeff and I had a conversation just before we started talking openly this morning on camera about microchip implants and about the fact that, I've been on Twitter lately, I've been posting things at my site, and I've been getting a lot of flack from various people coming forward and telling me that, focusing on microchip implants is very wrongful, that people are not being chipped, there are no implants, etc., etc. Well, I've been publishing the evidence to the contrary. So go take a look at some of the articles on my website. Go take a look at the links, the references. Take a look at the one that's on my webpage currently, actually on the front page, the homepage. And I'm talking about everydayconcern.net. Sherry Ganeri, whom I've interviewed before, has come forward and has provided X-rays, has provided information about implants that have been found by her doctor. She's looking right now for somebody to remove this particular ear implant, which is literally being used as a form of torture for her. She's being sent energy, RF energy, to this implant in her ear, which is sending incredible signals all through her body and literally being used as a torture protocol, very much along the lines of MK Ultra. This is modern MK Ultra. This is, trauma-based mind control. These programs have been sanctioned by these dark, dirty agencies in dark, dirty ops. These are all, under the table dealings, clandestine ops, classified ops, but the reality and the evidence is in the implant. And this is
Yeah.
why I suspect these classified agencies do not want people talking about implants. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop talking about implants because I'm finding a lot of information and a lot of evidence about implants. And, and as I was saying to Jeff earlier, there's no way I'm putting out information or writing articles and putting out journalism without looking at the evidence. I look at the evidence and I look at the source links, and I go back to the source docs. Whistleblowers have spoken out about implants. People like Dr. Rowney Kilder. Microchip implants go back 100 years. For the last 70 years, ever since the CIA has been in action, since 1947, they have been using implants for tracking. So
Absolutely.
no doubt they have other methodologies. No doubt there's other means. No doubt there's satellites, there's bioresonance frequencies, there's brain biores frequencies, etc. But they're also using implants because I think implants seem to make their task a lot easier. Monitoring, tracking, and keeping a hold of people, torturing people, running them through these dark, trauma-based mind control ops is all much easier for them when they have implants in people. And implants are getting tinier and tinier and tinier. And again, for that, there's information on my website. Go take a look. Just type in microchips, you'll find it, or RFID chips. They're at the point of being inks and tattoos now and powders.
Yes, they've been in tattoos for a long time, actually.
There you go. So, oh boy, Jeff is frozen. Um, I
There's a high about tattoos. I mean, Steve Quayle has mentioned many times about the tattoos have a link with this type of things. And interestingly enough, there's been a push by British law enforcement to hire more people with tattoos recently. And again, I'm not against tattoos. It's a very beautiful form of body art, but unfortunately, this lot will always pervert and try anything that intravenously from going to the dead. I don't think it's that the fact that tattoos are the issue. I think it's if it's the dentist, if it's surgery, if it's anything with a needle, an injection, and a vaccine, any way that an aerosol, a deodorant, any way they
and syringes.
Yeah, anything that's invasive that gives them access into the human operating system is going to be hijacked and utilized. And one of the reasons, because they always, these people are not creative, they're reactive. How they war game things when they do their little Tavistock Institute think tanks where they do 24 hours a day, in incremental shifts. They will abstractly war game how they can do this stuff. And obviously one of the ways is that they need total complete dominance in the world of surveillance, so that it doesn't matter what you do, you cannot beat them. And the most fantastic way to do that, as we've spoken before, I've run a challenge, not big-headedly, but people that, again, it's my pet peeve, and God bless people who talk about encrypted phones and PGP and all this stuff. Look, we're in the age of insular cellular surveillance. So and this isn't to engender learned helplessness, it's just to do what we're doing, which is, just confrontation, peaceful confrontation in their faces. You have maimed me, you have harmed me, you have invaded my total being, and I'm going to hold you to account for this, and the evidence is in me, and we're going to get you with it, right? With the cellular, the way, like I say to people, I said on Kev Baker's show, anybody come up with some kind of a phone system where you can beat them, where you can have encrypted, and people, in the past have said to me, well, there's a satellite phone and you can offer it and bounce off this, which to I say, what does it matter if you've got nanobiotech in your vocal cords, which can be even if you put your hand over your throat, the vibrations are being unscrambled by the quantum, by the supercomputers. What does it matter if you type something and it's encrypted, if you've got nanotech in your wrists, in the ends of your fingers, that can be unscrambled because they'll know the layout of a keyboard, that can be unscrambled by the supercomputers? What does it matter? And again, I'm not saying this for people to feel helpless, but we've got to get real about the level of tech that they've got, and it's cellular surveillance. They know the light speed the minute you stand up. The AI can know which muscles are being utilized. Again, people have said to me, how do they know where I am? How can they see me? All the lights are off. I'm under a sleeping bag that's foiled, that's lead, yada, 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 yada. How do they know that when I perhaps scratch my knee, that finger that I'm using to scratch my knee gets stung? How can they see me? Well, they can't see you. Well, they can with radar to a degree, but what they use is that the nanotech is sending signals that that muscle is working on that finger, and because they've got a 3D created version of you, like when they make King Kong and you see Andy Serkis, the actor that was inside, not in a suit anymore, but had like nodes all around his body, so from which they could do the computer generated imagery, the CGI for the King Kong. They have these simulations of you where they can see anything you're doing. And that's just one level of it.
That's
It's
just
so
one aspect of it, because the other aspect, but that's the base aspect, and you've spelled it out brilliantly. The nanobiosensors, the massive remote surveillance that's possible at the nano and at the cellular level through that means also provides an opportunity for them to control you at the level of cellular action, at the level of movement, at the level of gesture, the level of mood and emotion and thinking and thought. Imagine all these little tiny nanos. I mean, this is what transhumanizing is all about, No
it's a
longer are
different
you
form of
fully human.
V2K.
Sorry?
It's a different form. It's a different form of V2K. I remember you had Chris on, and he was
Correct.
talking about every single action that he was doing. Someone would say, "Okay, now you're picking up this, and now you're doing this." Well, another way that people that don't have V2K, that the same torture done differently, is when you pick up a cup, your hand will be stung. When you put the water in and the water's finished filling up the cup, you'll be stung on that hand. When you sit down, you'll be stung. When you stand up, you'll be stung. So it's continually letting them know that anything you do, it's total surveillance. You're totally swamped. You're totally mobbed.
Tracked.
And that's trapped. That's the same thing they try and do with the V2K, but it's done now electronically by, I'll have it many times. I'll have a cup, and I'll be pouring out water, and as soon as it gets to or when I finish my meal, the last spoonful of food in my mouth, my hand is stung. It's them letting me know, we know exactly, and which is why when you leave your house, you have the most amount of stalking, and when you come back to your house, you have the most amount of stalking, because those are two points that they've identified as being the most important in your journey to let you know that they've topped and tailed your life. And also a V2K thing just to talk about, Liz, who's coming down from Newcastle, said to me on the phone, she said, "Jeff, I'm coming down, I've had enough, I don't care what they do to me." And she said the minute that she decided, not spoke about, decided internally to come down, she heard a voice say, "We will shoot you if you go to London on the 7th.
Unbelievable. Oh my God. And ultimately, there's no doubt they are putting out, really awful threats out there, but in a sense, these are also threats. These are intended to intimidate rather than, are they really going to come with a gun and shoot you in public? I'd really like to know that. Are they really going?
Garbage. No, it totally defeated this is bizarrely some of the safest people from being assassinated in one way are TIs,
I think
because
so too.
the whole point of this is predicated upon data, upon torture, upon money. They want to torture you and carry out the job, but also get paid enough for 2 to 3 years where they've got an income for 2 to 3 years. It's all, and also
They don't want to
it
kill
makes
you. They really don't want to kill
it
you.
makes the whole thing a sham.
They
It makes
want
the
you to
whole thing a
suffer.
sham. Yeah, exactly, because that gives that energy, and there's other deeper occultic things to do
Right,
with that.
right.
But anybody can just shoot you, okay? I mean, if they wanted to assassinate us, it's the easiest thing in the world. They could make your heart explode. They could do whatever. It's not about that. It's about assassination, but it's about so much more, which
It's
is
about
why.
Exactly. And it's also about plausible deniability because, I can definitely tell you, I've had many assassination attempts, and every time I put out an article or put out a video or a podcast that's particularly important, such as this one, for instance, I'm sure, immediately after, well, usually during as well, but immediately after, I am hit massively. I'm hit in the heart, and we're talking
Yeah.
about with radiation weaponry, with pulsed microwaves being directed at my heart, or whatever, some kind of pulsed energy arriving at my heart. So I literally have to protect my heart at all times, with various means, and I do with orgonite, and with little bits of bakeware, etc. So,
Yeah.
and if I did not do that, I would not be sitting here and being able to continue what I'm doing. But the fact is, they do attempt to assassinate people like us, Jeff, who are speaking out. They do, but they're doing it through plausible deniability. They're using these stealth radiation weapons. I've often thought, well, if they really dislike what I'm doing so much, then perhaps, why don't they go to what they do to some people, putting a bullet through their head? But they have not done that with me. They are focusing on hitting me stealthily.
It's so busy. This is where, I have to say that I believe the narrative and some of their operating procedures are breaking down, because it's starting to become very chaotic. Even the narrative of what they're doing, and sometimes we try and make sense and think, well, yeah, they want to assassinate me, but they want to do it slowly. And why don't they do? Because even this is indicative of them themselves getting in a bit of a mess, because they would never have expected. I think they genuinely thought that after 2 to 3 years of this type of stuff, that people were going to be absolutely marginalized, incapacitated, unable to function, and they could
That's it
just take.
exactly. Or even 1 year, or even less than 1 year. I think that's their hope. That a very
That's the
short
hope.
period of intense targeting and people are going to shut up, stay put, not say a word, and literally be so debilitated that they cannot actually fight back.
And I think the people that were selling this program, that got rich off this program, obviously it's a long history to this, but the people that kind of really pushed it into the modern age, I think they picked a lot of soft targets. And I don't mean soft in as a pejorative term, but just people that perhaps weren't as robust as we are, and they got a lot of false intel of how wonderful this was, how quickly that it worked. But unfortunately now it's like that kind of I forget the name of it, but that universal law where, if somebody gets something, an organism gets strong in Australia, you'll find out that in another part of the
Oh
world,
yes, morphic resonance, I think. It's Rupert Sheldrake.
that's happening with us. Because what you're getting now is you're getting Catherine, who's and yourself and myself and Karen and everybody we can mention, who are getting bombarded daily, who are getting hit by the most, just as
Constant.
high as they can go. But we're kind of the human, this is why we do have kind of like a creator, and how we are incredible beings, is that they're starting to scratch their heads. And what we're starting to see, I've had one TI, a friend of mine, say to me that in his V2K, he's had people say sometimes, you're meant to be dead, you were meant to be dead, people in
Wow.
exasperation, and he's just being, just kind of like bouncing
Oh,
it
same here.
off them.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
and every
and
now and
so
then I get little images, get little indications to that from, YouTube, new YouTube subscribers. They're doing it this way, right? Now suddenly Undertaker has subscribed to your YouTube channel. Deadpool has subscribed to your YouTube channel. What do you think that is? Long Shot has subscribed. Long Shot, yeah, there are cars that park over here and hit me from across the street. That's my long shot.
I have to say, Ramola, after years of this, genuinely, and this isn't false bravado, I do have to say, oh, bless. It's so, I don't want to say silly, because that really demeans a lot of the suffering, but you have to stand back and just look at, on one level, if it weren't for obviously the intent behind it, just how ridiculous
Oh,
and
completely.
getting
And
the mind.
petty and absurd.
Absurd is a
Absolutely
great word for this, but I think they're running into difficulties, because what's happening now is that exponentially, because on Wednesday people are going to come down. I said to Liz on the phone, you may talk to somebody on the train coming down that you never would have if you were just marginalized inside your house. Now they have to follow that person. Now they have to open a file on that person, or expand that file, because they've got files on everybody. And if we talk to 10 people who are interested on Wednesday, now the whole thing starts to grow out. And what we're starting to see is them just almost knee-jerk reactions. There's a guy who lives in my building right now, and he's a Somalian chap, and I speak a little bit of Somalian because I taught a lot of Somalian refugees to speak English. And he was outside and he was talking to me saying that he was being bitten by snakes. And I just didn't quite understand. And he goes, no, no. And I went into his flat. And what he was trying to say was he was being electrically shocked in his flat. And what it is I think they've so tampered with my electricity and because I'm stung through I know it's coming through the electrical system inside the house. It's now bleeding out and going onto people in my block. And
Yeah.
this guy wouldn't go into his flat, and he came down, and I didn't understand what he was talking about. And he's saying that he's being shocked inside his building now. And I do have a good relationship with this guy, and it's just getting to the point where if you smile at someone in a shop, you know, that they're going, oh, let's open another file on it. They are
So they can't, you know, that's an excellent point, Jeff. So that really suggests they can't keep track of it. So literally what they're trying to do is they're trying to put out the scenario whereby those who are being targeted are to be considered untouchable or as lepers. Do not go in contact with people who are targeted, is the message they are putting out to the local community. So if people who are targeted bust through that and start making connections, start talking to people, these guys are not going to be able to keep up, is what you're saying. Or they're going to continue targeting in ever increasing concentric circles until everybody knows, until everybody wakes up.
That's what's happening. That's not speculation. That's exactly what's happening now, which is why your targeting is going up. Everybody's talking about them upping it, which again there could be various reasons for this. But I'm running against friends of mine now are telling me about some of the symptoms, and you know, on one hand it's not how it used to be. The thing is, because these are private contractors, because a lot of these are not the sharpest tools in the box, because they don't want a clear paper trail to the higher ups, these people are being given money, they've got gang leaders, and now they're just going, oh, I'll go for this one. And because they are so compartmentalized themselves, I believe they're not as informed as we are about what's going on around the world and around the country with regards to targeting. So it's like in Tower Hamlets, they're now thinking, oh great, we got all this money, he's talking to this person, let's get that person, I can hire my brother-in-law, I can get this ex-copper. But they don't know that all the other private security contracts in different boroughs are doing the same thing, because where plausible deniability in essence shoots itself in the foot is because when everything's so compartmentalized, when one of those compartmentalized rings starts to go off safari, off range, and they all do, what you're starting to see is the organized gangs on the ground level are now starting to become ridiculous and become more overt than they've ever been, because and the higher ups can't come down and kind of say, well, stop what you're doing, there's a whole global thing, you're whole messing it up. So exponentially, I think it's baked into the cake that the more, but I think it's absolutely, we have to be engaging and we have to be telling the story. And the more you do, the more you talk to people, the more they are having a problem, the more they have to react, because they can't leave they can't leave some wild card. Like if I talk to some guy I've never talked to on the bus, they can't just go, oh, he just had a conversation. The way these people are, the control freaks they are, they've got to find out about this guy. So now they've got to hire somebody else, or maybe they've got to stretch the file out, which is why you're seeing evidence of this. The fact that in the UK we had Gavin Williamson, who's the Ministry of Defence, the main minister, saying that the Russians are coming, that the Russians are going to
It's the same story here, as you know.
He said they're going to kill thousands of, and it was a bizarre statement. He said we're going to kill thousands of people. The Russians are going to murder thousands by a cyber attack. They take out the infrastructure. Well, what that is the MOD saying, we need more money. This is getting, because they're losing the end of the thread of this. The same when Andy Parker said of MI5, we need more helicopters. Now they've got, I think it's 18 in London already, and that's what we know of. So you're starting to see signs. Now they can't do the terrorist attacks as much as they'd like to get funding. So they can't use the ISIS because they kind of exhausted that one last year with the election. So now they're having to go to the Russians to get the excuse for money. So you're going to see the Ministry of Defence saying, in order to beef up Britain's cybersecurity, because the Russians are attacking, we need more money. I am saying, I believe that's because so many people are waking up, so many people are talking, that they're starting to lose the plot, and they have to grab at ever more people, open up more complex files, more complex surveillance on people, and it's growing daily. So the more we engage with people we'd never talked to, I'm not talking about on the internet. Internet's great, but as I said to Kev, you know, Kev Baker, amazing Kev Baker show, I said it's a binary weapon. Ramola D show is a binary weapon. It works in conjunction with activism. Then it's unstoppable. It's an incredible weapon. Activism on its own, if nobody knows, is good because you get to meet people. But activism beefed up and supported by internet shows and people like yourself, it's a binary weapon that's going to take them out. And we're starting to see them lose the plot. I am seeing behavior that I've never seen before in some of the perps. I'm seeing, I can't say it's panic, but I think confusion is perhaps the
Oh, I see it. I see the looks on their faces. They're freaking out, you know. And what I wanted to say was, Jeff, it's true. What you're saying is absolutely right. Activism plus some media work, you know, is needed together, hand in hand. And the media work, I want to actually let people know. Take my videos and please put them out there. And that's the other thing, you know, because we're all being digitally ring-fenced, as Jeff explained to us a little while ago, which means the impression that I get when I make my videos and put them out there is that really nobody's watching them, or really a very small fragment of the entire population. So if that's the case, and I really don't know what the truth is about how many views I'm getting, so what I ask is anybody who's watching this, if you understand the gravity of what is happening to us in all of our societies and our communities, in the US, in the UK, in all of Europe, in all of Asia, South America, North America, Australia, New Zealand, if you understand what's going on, and you know that's something we are going to continue to focus on, because that is the most important thing. It's not just 5% of the population that's being targeted. Everybody is being targeted, but it's being done very sneakily, being done very insidiously, and we are figuring it out, and we want to talk about it and tell people, but people need to know. So therefore, take the videos, you know, you're free. I don't think I've got everything under a Creative Commons license. I think it's all under the standard YouTube license currently, but you know, perhaps I should change that, change the setting to Creative Commons so that anybody is welcome to take my videos, download them to your channel, post them everywhere. Provide a link back is all I ask to my website and to my channel so that people know to come back to my channel for any new updates, because I'm trying very hard to stay on top of everything that people who are targeted are doing. And literally, I can tell you, the people who are targeted today, who are experiencing surveillance abuse by this uber surveillance, out of control, global police state that we are living in, they are the people at the cutting edge today. They are the people who are doing the research, who are speaking out and providing information. So I just wanted to throw that in.
No, it's absolutely, it's essential. And I would say anyone watching this, please watch the interview with Susie Dawson.
Oh, yes.
That Ramola, because I still feel that the people have failed perhaps to recognize exactly what Susie said during that interview, because she dropped numerous bombshells.
Major bombshells, yes.
If you're going to watch any if you're going back over the uploads, if you're going to watch one, I cannot recommend highly enough Susie Dawson and what she said, because it's so succinct and it's so reasonable. And the information that she gave, especially with regards to the use of how the NSA can just piggyback onto any satellite, anywhere in any of the countries that has a trade agreement with the NSA, I think is just jaw-dropping, and also it does dovetail with targeting, because if where in the cases where one is hit by a satellite, that does happen, then the NSA can jump onto any satellite at any time. When I was in Venezuela, when I went to Venezuela, I was hit. And I was just scratching my head how that was being done. But obviously, it's the CIA are all over Venezuela, unfortunately. But to go back to the Susie Dawson, just watch that one, because it's an excellent interview, and information, a lot of it that I'd not heard before. So I really recommend that interview.
Absolutely. And as you know, that really explains why when you travel, you're being hit everywhere. And it's
In the
because
hidden
of
aircraft, yeah.
these underlying NSA agreements with the intel agencies in other countries, what Susie says are called the Global Network or Extended Enterprise Agreements. So that's the way in which the world is being seen now, as an extended enterprise of the NSA. So think about that for a minute. So, so if people do not know who Susie Dawson is, she is an international journalist. She's a Kiwi, a New Zealand journalist who has been independently working on the Snowden documents, pulling out the Snowden documents that Glenn Greenwald already had published via The Intercept, and going back into them and looking through them, with a magnifying lens, looking closely to see what information is in there that mainstream media has not reported. And apparently mainstream media has not reported a great deal, because she's finding and mining these incredible gems. And her project is called Decipher You. If you do hashtag Decipher You and Google that, or search it on any search engine, you'll find her website, her Twitter feed, her YouTube channel. And she does live casts every I think Tuesday and Thursday, I'm not entirely certain, 2 days a week, with Elizabeth Leavos, I think, of Disobedient Media. They do this together. They're analyzing these documents together, and they're discovering incredible information. So I encourage you to watch her channel. But, watch the video that I did with her, because what she did there was she spent a lot of time and she summarized her findings over the past several months that she's been already looking at the docs. So actually invaluable information, and I was
That's the
so
best
grateful,
advice.
so
That's the
grateful
best.
to her.
Yeah, that's the best that I've seen. I think perhaps she was under the weather. Maybe sometimes that can help you, because your system's a little bit lower, and so you kind of slightly more thoughtful. But there was a lot of amazing stuff that she
Absolutely.
said.
I'm so grateful to her. And I hope that, I can have her back on our show at some point and, have her continue to relay the summaries of her findings in these NSA docs. And I hope also to pick up a little bit on what she's doing. Because one of the things she found out was a lot of information on the whole directed energy weapon, electronic warfare side of things, And a lot of people don't know that that there are lists of the law enforcement agencies, apparently, to whom these classified dues have been handed over. So this has been the focus of one of my inquiries. I've been trying to do 4 years about this, so I'm definitely going to pick up on that and try to do a spot of
No,
research in that
I
area.
think that's what we hope to kind of bring. For me, the organised stalking is again, it's something that I think the average everyday person can grab onto, and we can start the journey on the organised stalking. But then obviously it opens up the questions. Well, how do they always know where I am? Well, you carry a mobile phone. Well, no, I don't. And then we can start to kind of reverse engineer and peel the onion. But the icebreaker for me is the organised stalking, because that's something that people seem to have an understanding of. But with regards to the directed energy weapons, the electronic surveillance kind of kill grid, the prison grid that's set up, I mean, I'm sure as you've experienced as well, Ramola, it's in everything. It's in the doors of cars, it's in the doors of trains, it's in planes, it's in lights. It's in everything in the new life. Anything can be hijacked and used to sting you and to activate the implants, to give you pain, to give you nausea, to hurt you in the heart, hit you in the heart. It's actually been built into the modern age, unfortunately, and this is why the answer to the stalking, in effect, is the answer to a complete systemic change. As Dr. John Hall has been saying, what's needed is the stalking is and the paedophile rings. Once you start to pull at that thread, everything comes apart, which is why it comes under national security, because in order to deal with the stalking, you're going to find out that all these big contracted firms, all these food firms, the Mars bars, the planes, the people who make the trains, the people who build houses, it's built into everything. You can go into a supermarket now and be stung. You can go into a shop and you're going to be stung. You go into hospitals, my God, if there's anything of a kill factory these days, it's a flipping hospital, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
real
know,
hospital.
you're going to get stung incessantly, and it's all, it's all these, and now the weapons are down at a certain point where they don't, where it's kind of like you said, they've got plausible deniability. But come post the catalyst, whatever that event is, when this stuff is truly up and running to full power, then those attacks, those stings, I mean, they'll be deadly. But I don't believe they're ever going to get there, because I think what's happening now, and that's something I did want to say, is that I have a sense that we need to watch over the next week, the next month, because I believe that, as I've said, 2018 is the year, the make or break year, and I think it's very much the make year. I think we're going to start to see high-profile people who are involved in this, stuff's going to start happening to them. And I think over the next month, I'm going to be watching very, very carefully, over the next week, very, very carefully, is I think that there's going to be a sense of people who are involved in this have been told to stop by multiple actors, and they haven't, they're not, because they can't, in some senses. I think you're going to start to see, I don't want to say extrajudicial, and I'm not calling on anybody to be fired, I'm not saying that, but I just have a feeling over the next week, the next month particularly, let's look, because as I said, a lot's on our side, a lot more than people know, which is why I'm trying to reach these agencies and talk to people. There's a lot more on our side than people know. They obviously try to engender helplessness and despair, and they're everywhere and they're all powerful, but let's just see. I got a feeling that there's going to start to be a very erratic behavior, and people getting very, very sick, and people kind of disappearing, and so on and so forth, who know about this in the higher ups, who think they're untouchable. And that's something I'm looking for over the coming months, because I think stuff's going to start to kick in that people have been told, to stop by many, many different agencies and by many different actors, shall we say, and I don't mean film actors. So let's see, but I think we should be looking to start see that this is going to start breaking down, and people who know about this, who know they should stop, who think they can't be touched, I think you're going to see some comeuppance, quite dramatic comeuppance, in the next couple of months.
That's very promising, Jeff. I guess we should all start looking for that. I do see in the news there's a lot of stuff happening. As you know, there's been a lot of stuff happening on the Hill over here with the release the memo thing, the Pfizer memo, that the Nunes memo, which apparently has hints of surveillance abuse, possibly not about the kind of surveillance abuse that we are talking about, but some hint of it perhaps, and definitely as related to the president. So it should be interesting to see what comes out of all of that in the following week, in this week and the following week. I just wanted to add to something that you were saying, basically, about these nanobiosensors and the fact that we are moving into this age where literally we're going to be tracked everywhere you go, or you're going to be hit wherever you go, stung, as you said, because it's happening at that cellular level, etc. I wanted to say, if people question where this information is coming from and imagine that all of this is conspiracy theory, just start doing some research on your own. And some of the keywords you can look for are nanobiosensors. Look for remote sensing, because the military branches are doing a whole bunch of research, operations, and testing in the areas of tracking radar, military radar, and remote sensing operations, whereby literally they are throwing sensors, nanosensors, nanobiosensors, and nanosensors of various kinds all over the planet. They are literally putting these sensors everywhere. They have these weird, grandiose intentions of mapping and contouring the entire Earth with their sensory nets. Okay, this information is out there. You can find it. Look under clandestine operations, look under remote sensing, look under telemetry, look under nanobiosensors, nanotech, and you will find out a great deal of information. That's one thing I wanted to
Well,
say.
yeah, and even, I mean, the thing is, it's just logical. I mean, do they chip? Do our pets get chipped? If you have an expensive dog or
There you
expensive
go.
cat,
Stop there.
are they chipped? Right. So, okay. So if they're going to do that to pets and that exists, do you think that they don't do it to people? It's an asinine. Oh no, they'd never do it to us. But then again, we are. If you look at Codex Alimentarius, it's in there. It says man and other animals. So we are, according to that legislation and much more, we are deemed as animals, and our pets are absolutely chipped. If you've got a very expensive dog or a cat, they chip them. So why wouldn't they do to us? That's a very crude example of it, but it is all about, and again, if we go back to one of our first conversations, it is multi-leveled impetus why they do it, but that I will be as the Most High, fully omnipotent AI that is godlike, that knows everything. But also another thing that hasn't been said about this stuff is copyright law, because when we have our accounts
Oh my
inside of
God,
us,
it's total theft of intellectual property.
there you go. If you think a certain word, you will be debited from the internal account because you need to have a license to think certain things. If you think, say, the word Jesus, you may be stung. If you think the word targeted individual, you may get stung and debited out of your account, which is internal. So there's also a pecuniary, a financial element to this, where the thought control isn't just the state trying to dominate, but it's also make a buck, because when universal credit comes out and we're all getting a certain paid stipend of money, your thoughts will be open to copyright law infringement. And that may sound totally insane to people, but when you know how these people think, you'll be charged for thinking about certain things. Now that may sound bizarre, I really don't care. I know how these
Oh,
people think.
oh, absolutely. And this is where it's all headed. And yesterday, well, no, actually, I think it was the day before yesterday. I did a podcast. I just loaded it last night, so it's online. It's with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, and we're doing, a continuing series of conversations there about what's going on globally, with Agenda 21, climate change, global warming, the chimera of global warming, right? Which he explains because that's his field. But what we talked about actually was Agenda 21, and we deconstructed the language in Agenda 21. Or rather, we looked at other people's decodings. Mike Adams, the health ranger, has done a whole bunch of decoding. And the Truth Stream media guys, Aaron and Melissa Dykes. So Dr. Karlstrom was kind of looking at their stuff, and we were talking as well about, what these goals really mean. And that's the reality of what we're facing today. We are facing what the UN is trying to pull off around the world, a one world government. And Agenda 21 lays out its goals. And those goals sound brilliant and innocuous. It's about ending poverty in all its forms. It's about sustainable development. It's about feeding everybody in the world. It kind of sounds innocuous, but when you look into it and you look at what the UN has been doing, look at what the arms of the UN have been doing over time, you will understand that what they are actually supporting is absolute takeover by these mass corporations, corporations like Monsanto. So we're
Well, I
going to
can
feed
tell
the
you.
world with GMOs, for instance.
Well, Ramola, I can tell you, I'm going to describe thing what building has no homelessness, has no hunger, has care, and I could go on and go on. What type of building has all of those? A
A
prison.
prison, I was going to say.
Because I mean, there's no homelessness in prisons. Everybody eats in prison. Everybody's clean in prison. Everybody has clothes in prison. So from their point of view, it's kind of like, well, yeah, we are going to get rid of homelessness and get rid of hunger, but obviously we know the price for that. And perhaps this is the lie they tell themselves when they're laying on their beds and they're looking at their grandchildren, that this is all for a wonderful kind of brave new world. But we know that, again, along the fascist ideals to make money and also the intelligence having full spectrum dominance. They're very, very intertwined. And
It's
as I said, you know,
connected,
you've got to talk.
absolutely. It's full spectrum dominance is ultimately what it is. It's total control of the human population. And it's all connected with all of those creating wildlands and mega regions and putting people in cities, the stack and pack city concept, so that, everybody can be kind of secluded and moved into a tiny little space, surrounded with cell antennas, cell towers, and 5G. Pulse microwave shots every 2 seconds, and then nanobiosensors in your body. So, and you've got, the continuous aerosols, etc. That it's such an extreme dystopian vision that's actually halfway rolled out already. And this is what
But
this
it
is what we
cannot succeed. It cannot succeed without the catalyst. It cannot. Look at us. This is never going to work because we will, we're at the early stages in a certain sense of our descent. It's becoming far more substantive. It's becoming far more in their faces. We are really starting to run up the hill towards the vampire's castle with the pitchforks and the torches. This is happening.
this is
Okay,
happening.
so,
And go
so
ahead.
they know that they were hoping that they could kind of surreptitiously under the radar take out the big nodes. And that word's a very interesting word that you need to research. The big nodes, which is why we're involved in curve modulation, because we're super nodes.
I
It's
think
strange,
so.
bizarre language.
Apparently so.
But apparently so. And so the thing is, it's not working because we are becoming troublesome. We are going at them. We're starting to see them become reactive and modulate curves. So they know that this isn't going to work because it's growing out of control exponentially. They're going to get an uprising on their hands. So they perhaps thought, well, maybe we can bring in the New World Order, under the radar, take out a few big wigs, neutralize them, and kind of soft manage the New World Order into being. Because I think a lot of them got cold feet. And also a couple of times they've tried it and it hasn't worked, the catalyst. But now they must know and they must realize that they need the catalyst. Whatever that is, this is not going to work. I believe they were trying to soft manage this in a little bit, because you remember we had so much talk about financial collapse, about all types of Nibiru and all this type of stuff, all of which may still be valid. But I think they're realizing, I think they were hoping, and I think a lot of them, because they are humans, some of these people, they do have grandchildren.
Partially human.
Exactly. So they must look at them and think, well, I kind of had the sense, when it was starting to go live, that they were thinking, actually, this isn't such a great idea, having this New World Order in place. So let's just slow it down a bit and let's just bring it in covertly by assassinating and neutralizing a few of the people that would give us trouble. But now they're seeing that we're being even more troublesome and we ain't stopping, and it's going to get a lot worse for them, and they're starting to unravel. Clearly the narrative's being lost and they're having to modulate curves. So now more than ever they need a catalyst. What that is anybody can speculate from speculate upon. It's from A to Z. But what they got, what you said, we know where they want to get to, but they ain't going to get it unless something massive traumatizes everybody, shuts everything down, because clearly we are starting to get the wind in our sails. And again, it's the great analogy I like to use is the Castle Dracula, where the peasants, God bless them, start to see the children drained of blood. When you start to see that, you don't go up to the castle door, knock on the door and say, here's a letter, here's a petition, could Dracula please stop drinking our children's blood? And Igor at the gate says, all right, I'll consider it and maybe we won't, and then you go away happy because you think he's given the petition to Dracula. It doesn't work like that. We have to go at them figuratively with the pitchforks and with the lighted torches and get the vampires out of the castle, and that's what's starting to happen now. So again, this year's the big year. They're going bananas. They're hitting you more than ever. They're hitting me more than ever. They're hitting everybody more than ever. This is not indicative of strength. This is indicative of people that are worried, people that are getting like Nero fiddling when Rome burns. They're going a bit bonkers. And again, the best way to bring down a tyrant is to get them to act like tyrants, and more increasingly, they're having to uncloak in order to try and head us off at the pass. We saw it with the secret societies in the police. We've seen it with Damian Green. We've seen it in the US all over the place. And we're starting to get the momentum. And I believe this year is the year when good people within some of these agencies are going to start to think, look, this seemed like a good idea, but flipping hell, this is going the wrong way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, Jeff, we are going to make this the year because, frankly, you and I have had enough. We've all had enough. This is surveillance abuse at its well, I usually use the phrase at its finest, but it's really it's at its worst. What they're really doing to us, what they're doing to the people that they are targeting, surveying, and monitoring, naming and defaming and libeling and slandering as problematic or violent or extremist or whatever, what they are doing to us with these weapons and with these psyops techniques of gaslighting and organized stalking is simply execrable. It is barbaric. It is outrageous. And no normal, sane, civilized human being would stand for it. And they know it, And at this point in time, I think we are getting the word out to people that what's going on is real. It's not mass delusion. It is real. It's happening. And it's profoundly evil. And the people who are doing this need to be called out. We need to say it like it is. We need to call it for what it is. We need to speak out and keep using the same language that really describes what it really is, rather than cover it up and try to pretty it up. There's nothing pretty about these programs. They are being covered up in mainstream media. They're being given names like Prevent and Contest and things like that. This is not about prevention and contesting. This is about assault, torture, subjugation, and the removal of those supernodes that you were talking about. People in communities who actually can see, can analyze what's going on, and can speak out. So they're trying to take out the so-called troublemakers first, the people who can speak out, the community activists, naming them as troublemakers, taking them out first, and then in that way completely subjugating whole communities. So it behooves us, I think, to continue speaking out and to continue, I think, getting the word out that it's not just one or two people who are being targeted, it's all of us. Whole communities are being targeted by these means. Agenda 21 is about subjugating all of us. It's about a real takeover of humanity. These transhumanizing programs with the nanotech is about, transhumanizing everybody, robotizing everybody, destroying everybody's lives. Full spectrum dominance and total human control. Everybody, if you care about your own life or your child's life or your grandchild's life, you have to be aware of what's going on. Listen to what those who are already being targeted are saying, because the ones who are targeted really know what's going on.
Yeah. And again, if anybody's been, practically, how does that express itself? It's if anybody's wanted to inform the police about the targeting, if anybody's wanted to break cover with this, again, the perfect opportunity, if you are in London, is that we will all go with you together to New Scotland Yard on Wednesday to say that organised stalking exists, that we are victims of organised stalking. I don't like to use that word, but you sometimes have to speak the language that people understand, that we are victims of organised stalking. Correct. and that any type of scheme, prevent, contest, whatever, that the people that are doing this, we are telling the police that they need to check the compromised intelligence, because we are not dangerous to the community. We are letting the police know that they have a duty of care, which they do, to investigate, because we are telling them that the intelligence that these private security contractors are working under, the rights, that the license that they're under, another important word, the license that they're under, is being falsely acquired. And also, I want people to believe, I know I don't want to start sounding like some sort of life coach, but it's incredibly important, without getting too deep into it. I'm sure that your audience is very, very up to speed on this stuff. But one of the ways that the organised stalking is used is to just bring dullness, to bring low brain activity, to make people think there's nothing they can do, that this is such a dominant foe. This is the Darth Vader syndrome. This is the Dalek syndrome. If you've ever seen Darth Vader, when you take off the scary black cloak, there's a guy who's been burnt to death in a volcano. If you ever watched Doctor Who and the Daleks, which American audience may not know about, but this is this very frightening mechanical beast, but when you take off the top, there's a slimy kind of green thing there. These people have to project, because there's so few of them. Again, with the Indian, how the British did it with the subjugation of the Indian Empire, there were so few of them. And again, I have seen, you know, photographs of 2 Nazi stormtroopers with hundreds and hundreds of Jews about to be hoarded into whatever. Because they are so few, they have to project this total dominance, dominance. And I'm saying, believe, start to think and believe and feel that they are unraveling. They have been beaten, work back from victory. Okay, these people, these people are done. If you do any reasonable look at what they're doing, it's untenable.
Absolutely.
It's unsustainable. And so we have to start to believe this and just bide our time. And again, another point I want to make, one of the positives of gang stalking, if we could ever say there are any positives, is to have a decent functioning society where we can truly,
oh my gosh, yes,
we need to get rid of the toxic elements. Now, historically, culturally, it's very difficult to identify sociopaths and psychopaths. These people need to be put on lists and have medication or dealt with in some way. Now, historically, it's very difficult to identify these people, and so they've ingratiated themselves into positions of power and pollute everything. Now, with the organized stalking, everyone who's engaged in this, everyone who's as much as picked their nose or scratched their head, worn sunglasses or worn red and engaged in this, will be on a database. So we now have a way to identify all those within our society, within our communities, who are toxic individuals who have sociopathic tendencies. So when this breaks, and we go for the head of the snake first, when they give up the ghost and we start to get these databases of all the perps that are involved on this, we will be able to isolate them. We will be able to put them, have them identified and contain them, so we could actually have a real fighting chance. You see, one of the strange things about all of this, and there's a whole level to this that we don't understand, Ramola, but by these people being so vile, being so overt and coming out of the shadows to engage in this, we've actually been able to draw the poison out of society, and we can now identify them, and we can now,
oh dear, I think we've lost Jeff's audio again. I'm going to wait a few seconds and hopefully it'll come back.
Got them all on.
We lost your audio a little bit there, Jeff, the last few things that you...
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, because you're talking about the stalkers, you know, the actual perps. And you see that there's, gosh, there's so much to say about those so-called perps, right? The guys who are actually doing this to other people on the ground. What they've tried to do is they've tried to co-opt everybody in communities, right? They've tried to take over everybody in communities. So literally to again, plausible deniability, trying to prevent particular people from being singled out as the abusers. So they've spread the abuse, spread the risk, so to speak, spread the deniability, which really means they've really taken over whole cities and whole towns. So perhaps some people, our neighbors, the ones who have fallen into this trap, need a little bit of life coaching, actually. Need a little bit of, you know, wake up and try to figure out what's right and wrong here, and start thinking with your morality, principles, and spine, rather than with your docility and subservience and subjugation to these criminal intelligence agencies and criminal fusion centers and criminal military branches that are absolutely desecrating people's lives, destroying people's lives, and using weaponry, radiation weaponry, carcinogenic radiation weaponry on people.
You see, Ramola, you're kind of, the way you're speaking, you're speaking as a kind of an impassioned person with empathy, who is, you know, and again, as I would as well, and I think, you know, in your heart, when you've ever confronted these people and spoken to them and engaged with them, that there's something missing, that they don't get it, and they don't even care. I mean, a lot of times, well, why would they do this? Do you know what? I don't think they really care what the reason is. I think they're so enamored to be asked by law enforcement, this fetishistic to be included on the winning
That's
team,
it,
to be
yes.
involved.
They think it's the winning,
They don't
and they think it's okay because law enforcement, somebody with a badge, whether it's the
care.
FBI or the NSA or CIA or the DIA or the local army intelligence or whoever shows up at their door and says, "You've got to help us. We've got your neighbor under investigation. You've got to jump into your car just when she jumps into her car. You've got to turn and look her straight in the face, you know?"
They don't care, and that's why you see, this is why you see the very clearly and carefully manufactured image. Why you have James Bond, why you have Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, why you have this fetishistic, law enforcement, the military going in to save the kids, and you see all of this sort of. It's so that and it's completely false. But we suffer from it terribly in the United Kingdom whenever anything to do with, like, we have a TV show here called Spooks, which talks about MI5, and I literally, if I ever watch it, and I've watched it sometimes when I'm feeling particularly masochistic, and I have to have a bath bag because the kind of crap that they put out about the intelligence
Oh,
agencies,
absolutely.
simply mind-blowing.
The
But it's
good
all
old boys
deliberate. So
do.
yeah, so when somebody knocks on the door and says, hi, we'd really like to, use you. You're going to be sent text. When you get this text, I want you to leave the house. I want you to wait here. And when you get this text, I want you to cough, so on and so forth. And they don't care. They are just so ecstatic that they're on the winning team, that they're in the club, that they are part of the surveillance state, that they've got meaning. And where I am, I would say, a lot of people have said this, but in Tower Hamlets is a very economically challenged borough, and there is an absolute correlation between these economically challenged areas and stalkers, because money is a huge
Money,
part.
that's, I was going to mention it, they are being paid. These are people who are getting, they're paid in cash and in kind, I understand. They get perks.
Yeah, I mean that I have been followed up to 5 cars at a time. They will. I mean, I am very, very heavily gang stalked. I get organised. I get it way more than a lot of people that I know, and because I think they just, as a point, they're trying to get a reaction out of me, because I find it quite not easy, but because I made a point in the early days of actually stopping the cars and banging on the windows, and when police cars would pull up next to me, I would bang on the window, and actually I saw them. When motorbikes with guys with dark glasses would pull up, I would go into the middle of the street and stop them. I mean, I was pretty in the early days, and get them to take the masks off so I could look at them, because once you get an essence of what's in the car, once you get an essence of this is why it's important sometimes just to very gently, I don't recommend this for everybody, but I just really spoke with them, and what you'll find is many of the, and again, you can, because of the mind control and the AI, a lot of people who are doing the coughing and the scratching of the head, I mean, I've noticed so many people with mental difficulties are also involved, and they're being like automatons. They're being sent from A to B and having a feeling to wear a red coat and to stand here and not knowing why. So there is that very controversial element of this, of the mind control at the very, very higher ups, where you may engage with someone and become angry with someone who literally doesn't know what you're talking about, although they are clearly engaged in organized stalking. You get it's all levels of it, and it's a very, very bizarre element of this, which is why you should never really be angry at any of the perps, because they're put there as cannon fodder to a degree. But it's and again, but you can't reach them. You can't. I mean, and I think one should give up on reaching them and just think, right, we've identified them. We've got the databases of their names on them. So once they're identified, we'll have some type of database, positive database, so that whenever they go for jobs or whenever they go, and I'm not saying this to be punitive, I mean, anyone who would engage in this unquestioningly is very much a very toxic element within society, because you would never dream of doing it. I would never dream of doing it. So there is clearly something that the intelligence agencies, using social media predominantly, have identified in these people, that they've done us a favor. So when this goes sideways, we'll know who to really I don't want to sound like it's revenge, because it's not, but these people that would do this are very toxic elements within society. And now one of the positives, to use a strange word in connection with organised stalking, is that we've identified the personality types that would engage in slow kill, assassination, and torture, which is why when we get the legislation, and that's something I'm very involved in at the moment, looking at, to have an organised stalking bill, is that the minimum default setting for charges is attempted murder, no less. Anybody who's done anything in relation to organised stalking is part of a chain, the intent of which is severe marginalisation, suicide and self-harm. So anyone, even if they've done it once, if they've been identified by law enforcement or intelligence agencies or a private contractor to engage in organised stalking, once identified, minimum charge, attempted murder.
Absolutely. And you know, Jeff, I wanted to say also that over here, we have activists over here working on a bill proposal for organized torture in the California
Wonderful.
state legislature. And I'm working on putting forward an article on this subject, which I hope to publish this week. And also there's Susie Dawson's anti-spy bill in New Zealand. And if you look at our conversation there, I wanted to find out more about that bill. And literally every country in the world has got to have an anti-spy bill, has got to have an organized stalking bill and an organized torture bill, because what's happening is the spy agencies have taken things like the Patriot Act, all this is all post 9/11. They've gone haywire, right? They've enacted legislation in all of our countries to crack down on the populace in an intense way, to massively amp up their surveillance, and they've put it down in legislation. They are currently protected by legislation, and they're protected by huge budgets and funding. And we need to, as a world populace, turn that around, because under
Yeah.
that aegis, they are running terror operations on the ground, they are running human trafficking operations on the ground, and they are running torture operations, torture and stalking operations. And
Yeah.
any one of us, I know, Jeff, that you would be willing to testify in front of Congress or Parliament anytime, and I certainly would. And what we're putting out here is the whole truth and the absolute truth. And we are willing to get in front of anybody and testify to what we know is truly going on, based on our experience and based on what we are reporting as writers, filmmakers, and journalists.
Yeah, and again, that's amazing, because one of the ways that these people are navigating and finagling their way around this is that the legislation doesn't really exist to prosecute them. So this is another sense of why there's so much emboldened. They're so emboldened because there's no law that we can really point to that really captures what's going on. Which is why, again, on Wednesday, I'm suggesting I've been writing something that I hope people a lot smarter than me are going to develop, but just to give a template of an organised stalking bill. Catherine mentioned the Royal Courts of Justice. I'm going to be putting in that early kind of draft. Again, I'm not self-delusional about my importance, and I'm hoping that to start the conversation about what an organised stalking bill should look like, I've put some things that I've identified as being protocols, and I will be handing that in on Wednesday as well at the Royal Courts of Justice. I will also be giving this to my MP and asking him to present it, which will be very funny considering that he's up to his neck in it. I will be presenting this organised stalking bill to him, and I will be asking him to present it in the House, which he's allowed to talk about and to do because an MP, and I'm going to say that there needs to be an organised stalking bill. Here's a draft of it, please run with it, because that's one of the problems, is there isn't the legislation in a sense specifically where we can talk about colour sensitization being a crime. To induce mental difficulties or some sort of mental anguish due to by the repetitive use of colour. I mean, it's difficult to coalesce and quantify that in law at the moment, but we need to highlight these protocols to anybody who repetitively uses. And it is a minefield, because you could say, well, but there are specific ways to do it that intelligent people can do, that we draft an organised stalking bill that every country has, that the repetitive use of gestures, no matter what they are, in a coordinated and systematic fashion, to induce feelings of unease, has to be an attempt, you know, like cyberbullying, right? You can be prosecuted for trying to talk someone into killing themselves via the internet. Well, if you're organising, there's a government contract for people to be standing on street corners for the next 10 years, coughing every time you walk past, that's an assault. So we've got to framework that into legislation, and I believe it's very, very possible to do, and that's another thing we want to be injecting into the argument. Again, I've been working on that, not that I'm any type of genius with the law, but just to get it started so people a lot smarter than me can have a look at it and say, well, it doesn't work like that, but perhaps we can do that, and actually get an organised stalking bill in place in the UK and around the world that is specifically, that when we talk to the police, we can say, look, this person is doing this, it falls under this legislation, blah, 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 blah. And that's something we lack at the moment, which may contribute to why these people are so arrogant, because what law do you prosecute them under? You can maybe say some sort of laws that exist now, but we need specific organised stalking bills in the US, in the UK, where this type of organised, sophisticated organised stalking, and the protocols which are used, which are clearly military intelligence, military psyop tactics, need to be identified and cannot be used on citizenry.
That's absolutely brilliant, Jeff, and I'm so glad you're working on it, because literally I think it comes down to that point. We literally have to change the laws. We have to change the laws, we have to change the government, and we have to ultimately run for office ourselves, apparently, as Susie Dawson is doing with, with the Internet Party.
Yeah.
Perhaps we all should be doing what she's doing, because I think that's brilliant. And what I was thinking also is the bills that she's come up with, and what Dr. Tomo Shibata in California has come up with, and what you've come up with. Perhaps you should all share the text of what you are working on and work together. And I'm personally thinking I'd like to jump in the fray myself and draft my own bill proposal, because one of the things I'd really like to really legislate against, or see legislation enacted against, is human trafficking into these military experimentation projects. I mean, how dare the militaries of any of our countries think that they have carte blanche to start, pointing their weapons at us. And that's what they're doing. The Air Force is running these operations in my neighborhood over here, using military tracking radar and using directed energy weapons. They are doing biobehavioral research studies. They are testing these radiation weapons in the field. What right do they have to test their weapons on your body or my body or anybody's body? They don't. I'm sorry. They can, jump up and write a bunch of directives saying anybody under surveillance can be experimented on to their heart's content, and all of that is unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional.
Absolutely. And again, is to really look at what's going on, the real, the macro view. Okay, a new world order is coming, right? Whether it's a good one or a bad one, we are at the brink of great change. Okay, now. The positive of this is that this stalking, these paedophile rings, and maybe I'm using strange language, but they are an opportunity to really get rid of the vilest, toxic elements on planet Earth, so we can have a genuine, I don't want to say new world order, but a genuine different experience as humans. Now, in order to have that, we have to expel the poisons from our body. How are we going to do that? First, we need to identify the poisons, and these people have done it themselves. Anybody wishing to engage in organized stalking, anybody who's involved with organized pedophilia, we need to identify them and we need to remove them, which is why the talking about running for office is incredibly important, because systemic change. You cannot deal with organized stalking in a compartmentalized fashion. It polluted everything. One of the reasons I believe that this has been allowed to be so corrosive and get itself so deep into everything is because I have a very strong belief in God, and I believe in a creative spirit, and I'm particularly a Christian, so I call that Jesus, but other people may have different experiences, different names to call upon. But I'm believing in order to change fundamentally, we have to rid everything. So in a certain sense, I agree with some of the people who are doing, there has to be a fundamental change for good. And one of the ways, because, one of the ways that we can do this is expelling from the human experience, the human community, these awful, vile people who just for some reason don't who engage in these type of activities. The organized stalking, once it goes sideways, once we get complete full disclosure with the paedophile rings, we will be able to, for the first time ever, change systems to think, well, this, we can never allow this to happen again. How did this happen? How did this garbage get itself into such elite positions of power? We need to forever change our systems, have a new way of thinking. And that's why this terribly difficult, painful, agonizing situation society is in at the moment, the suffering that we're going for, it really is also a way for the human community to expose. And what we're doing is we're exposing and trying to expel from society this poisonous element within us. But in order to go to the next level, and I do think we are on a moment where the human race can really become something that it was always meant to be, but first we've got to deal with the garbage, and this garbage has identified itself. This garbage is becoming more and more apparent, which, although on one way is incredibly painful for us and we are being tortured, but it also gives us the opportunity that for the first time perhaps in human experience, this lot is more exposed, more easily identified, grabbed by the neck and chucked out than ever before. So that's the positive of this. I know the experience of people watching this now, people are probably going, my God, you don't know, well, this is so awful. And I understand that. This is a painful time. Change is incredibly painful. But I believe 2018, you know, if we're going to go forward as a race, we can't go forward with paedophile rings in existence. We can't go forward with gangs of organized stalking and people firing directed energy weapons. So we've got to flush all of this out. And the first way you do that is by identifying it. And because they've been so forward, so brazen, so hubris-filled, they have, in a sense, identified themselves for us. So when we get the upper hand, which we are getting, this lot will be done up in a bow, in a package, nicely identified for us, nicely on data lists for us, and we can actually, good people within society will be able to deal with them. So it's a very crux time for humanity now, because we are about to go to the next level, to use crude language. But I think that's where we can actually deal with the very degenerate elements within society, and looking at this as a cosmic kind of overall experience. I think we have to go through this in order, and we are expelling the toxic elements out of our human community, out of planet Earth. But first they've got to be identified, and how do you identify that? And that's by, in a sense, them being allowed to behave in the way they're doing, so that the light is now on them, because they've been doing this for millennia and getting away with it. But now they're finally, which is so important that we identify them. And now we would never be able, this is a unique conversation that we can have now, talking about nanobiosensors, about what the long con is, what they want to get up to. They are identified, they know we see them, as Brzezinski has said. And I think increasingly good, and I'll just leave it as that because people have different belief systems, but good spirituality, I think, is beginning to make its move. And I think this year you're going to see more than ever, you know, more than ever, you're going to see strange things happening to bad people.
That's a fascinating view, and actually very reassuring that, you know, in a sense, the toxic lot are kind of rising to the surface and are being identified and going to be removed. And it's interesting that when we were talking about human trafficking rings, you went right to the pedophile rings. You know, so the same guys, the military experimenters, the guys who are, you know, loading it over us in Parliament and well, not really in Congress. I think it's above and beyond Congress, really. Those guys who are kind of running the show currently are, in fact, as you have pointed out, connected to these pedophile rings. And perhaps in our next conversation, Jeff, we need to get back to that subject, and we can couch it within the framework of your campaign for decency, which is part of what this change is all about, and also perhaps honor and bring forward some of those police whistleblowers you've mentioned, who have indeed identified and worked with, you know, finding, locating, and trying to get rid of these child prostitution and child trafficking rings. So if you know of any police officers who are working on this, I'm thinking perhaps that would be the next step for us, to have perhaps a roundtable conversation and bring their information forward and put it before the world public.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, one in particular, I'm allowed to use his name. I've asked John, and that's John Wedger, who's doing a walk as well. He's talking to MPs, several, and more MPs actually now. There's three, we believe, that have come on board and are talking about how hard it is to change and to really deal with these paedophile rings due to they're talking about immense pressure from the highest levels that are stopping these good men and women, these good MPs that want to do something about the paedophile rings. So they are encountering incredible resistance at the highest levels. But there are some MPs that I will not name, I can't name, who are absolutely doing what they can to, and also to bring about an independent body outside of the police and outside of Parliament, which is what they're asking for, which is a very good objective-based target, and that is an independent body, independent of the police, independent of politicians who will investigate child abuse. You bring that in and the whole thing falls down, which is they are fighting tooth and nail not to do. But I know there are whistleblowers more than ever. I think I said before that John told me 10 ex-police, his words, they're coming out of the woodwork. They're coming out of the woodwork because they're you know, just to finish on this perhaps, I mean, when we were outside Parliament, the last demonstration that we had, which was the biggest that we've had, I think it was on the 17th. Yeah, the 17th. A lot of people came down from all over the country, and I was, as usual, kind of like shouting out, and there were lots of police, because just by coincidence there was another demonstration at exactly the same time. So there were hundreds of police there.
Oh my goodness.
It was, yeah, pretty crazy. And so I started shouting, saying, oh, you know, the police, that why don't you know, the police support brother police officers or fellow police officers, sister police officers who stand up against corrupt politicians. And I had my back to the police, but the people that have been watching me saying this, they said at the beginning the police were laughing and just joking. And he said by the end, when we were saying that the police know who the paedophiles are, they know about the organised paedophilia, why don't they stop it? He said the police were just looking as if someone had, you know, like their one of their pets had died. They were looking very, very crestfallen. They know, but the thing is, unless you confront this, yeah, they know, and they're being asked to cover up stuff. Again, quietly, when you do these demonstrations, we're approached by police several times. Absolute experiences of police officers coming up to us and saying, you have no idea what we have to go to, the politics involved, what we're not allowed to do.
Wow.
We're not happy with this. Thank you so much for doing it. Don't stop.
Oh, that's terrific. So they recognize your efforts and the efforts of other activists to bring attention to the criminality, you know, so that's pretty
Numerous
incredible
occasions,
and reassuring.
every single demonstration, there's been at least 2 to 3 police officers who are complete, and one police officer in particular, an older police officer, when he started talking to us, immediately, bang, a handler came straight out, a younger officer came straight next to him and pushed and said, you know, no, don't talk to them, don't talk to them. So the police know they're very, very surveilled themselves. And again, there's a whole dissonance that's going on. I can tell you first-hand experience. I deal with a lot of police when we do these demonstrations. I'm always talking to them, trying to, and I can tell you there's a lot of dissonance inside the police force. There's a lot of them having to do stuff they really do not want to do, and they know something's up and they want something done about it. And that's why it's so important for the public to set the example. Again, the point I keep making to people is don't go to your abusers for help. Do not think that you're going to wake up and the intelligence community and the police are going to clean house. They're not. How it's, well, I don't want to limit any possibility, but what I'm hearing is we go first as the public, because presumably they work for us, right? So we go first, we say we've had enough, we want them to behave like this, which gives the good elements within the police the ammunition to go to their COs, to go to their higher ups and say, look, you know, the peasants are getting, you know, they're at the gates. You can't tell them just to eat cake anymore. This is getting untenable. Whereas right now, They do all these egregious overreaches of their power, and nobody says anything, or it's isolated to the internet, which they can bury. Because the police officers know they can't go on your website. No policeman can go on Ramola D. He knows if he does, if he's smart, boom, there'll be some flag going up and they're going to be very interested in him, which is why a lot of them don't want to talk to us openly. But we've had cards, business cards, dropped at our feet. We've had other ways that they've tried to communicate to us because they know they're being watched. I mean, this stuff may sound like spy movie stuff, but I've got you know, we deal a lot with these people because we're doing demonstrations so often, and I'm quite happy to engage with them, and know a lot of ex-police officers. Contacted last week by 2 ex-police officers, and I can tell you they want to do something specifically about the paedophile rings. The organised stalking is something I believe perhaps will piggyback onto it, but they're very intimately linked, because the same people doing the organised stalking are the same people involved with the paedophile rings. But the police, they know time is up on the paedophile rings. They know that it's not working. Their consciences are plaguing them, and the more the public does, I think the more you'll see the police, good officers starting to break, which is what we're starting to see. John Wedger's now being more politically active than he's ever been. Wonderful. Because he saw up and he said thank you, because he's starting to see the public actually care about the issue. They don't think it's all right for children to be systematically abused, stuck in cages, you know, underground all over London for somebody's delight. Oh, but they need to be so important. 2018 is so important. Please, anybody from London, if you can get down, now is the time for us to unite, to get together. Communications are so interfered with. FaceTime is what it's all about in 2018. Again, the binary weapon, reporting back from the progress we're making from demonstrations with Ramola D reports, with any type of internet, you know, good internet source. But it's got to be a binary weapon. It's got to work hand in hand, as Richie Allen has said, as Kev Baker has said. They're going to talk about more in the future, and even Catherine Horton said at the beginning of Techno Crime Fighters, let's talk about the demonstrations, not just what I'm doing, but what everybody's doing. But the time is now, guys. The time is now. The light is breaking. We can really start to force this open. And when I say light is breaking, there's nothing Luciferian about that. Got to be really careful. I'm talking.
Like that.
Yeah, really, the time is now to support. You know, we know what the problem is, but we've got to get out. So please, the 12 p.m. Wednesday the 7th, if you're a team.
So I'm sorry, you were talking about the demo, right? That's upcoming.
Yeah, just that's so important right now for people to, you know, there's this so much learned helplessness in society at the moment, but it really belies what the truth is. So, you know, there's the kind of higher echelons of power. I mean, it's anything but a done deal at the moment. And anything anybody does right now is kind of very amplified in reality. And what I would say is that, you know, please come and join us if you're someone that's wanted to report this. Then we'll support you, go with you, because that's our intention. One of the aims is to go to New Scotland Yard and remove their plausible deniability. I'm not going there to ostensibly get them to ameliorate the situation or to help us. I'm going there to as more of an aggressive act. Not that I will be aggressive, but intellectually aggressive, spiritually aggressive, in the sense of removing their plausible deniability, because I'm starting to see signs, again, the curve modulation, I'm starting to see signs that they're bringing into the forefront the organised stalking, making it a little bit more palatable, so that they can start to say, well, we didn't know what they were doing, so we want to.
Good point. I bet that's why all this information about the Prevent program is suddenly being released.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly, because again, what we're saying, what we're talking about, I mean, they're reacting to, but once you take away the plausible deniability, that's going to give a lot of the mid-ranks sleepless nights, because they know the kind of the emotional caliber and you know, the moral caliber of those above them. They wouldn't think twice about chucking them to the dogs. So, but the main thing is 2018, as we've been saying, is such an important year that what we're doing is really having an effect. I mean, these people have gone too far, clearly, and it's becoming bizarre. I mean, I'm a sort of an analyst in these sort of things, and the behaviour it looks like a lot of people don't know. It seems to me that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, because this has to be so compartmentalised that some elements are going absolutely postal and crazy, whilst other elements are carrying on the psyop, and like the political elites aren't quite sure. So this is where the compartmentalisation is starting to work against itself, because cohesion is starting to break down, which is good for us. But we can really get them on this. It's so doable. The organised stalking is so doable to. Yeah, just to finish, to say that, you know, kind of the audience can act as an international witness, that we're planning on the 7th of February, Wednesday, 12 o'clock outside Parliament, to have this demonstration. So if there's any funny business that goes on, any interference, it's going to be very, very conspicuous and give us more power, and also supercharge our message. But just so that there are international witnesses, that we are planning on the 7th of February, Wednesday, 12 o'clock outside Parliament, to have the largest gathering of TIs to expose the organised stalking, and then to go on to New Scotland Yard to report it, that this is going to happen on Wednesday, and that, yeah, just that we are all aware that this is something that perhaps the intelligence community may not want or like, and therefore if there is any funny business, that they're being put on notice and that we're watching, and it will be very conspicuous if in any way that anybody associated with that event is unable to attend for whatever reasons outside their control, that this is going to be very, very conspicuous. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yes, so thank you, Jeff. And literally anybody who's watching, please do join Jeff in front of Parliament Wednesday, the 7th of February, 12 noon. Join Jeff and the whole crew of people who've stepped forward to join in this demo, to have a physical presence there and to have signs and to simply present the message to anybody out there in London at that time that surveillance abuse will not be tolerated and has to be brought to an end. And we need to do that kind of thing in the US as well. So we need to get cracking on our efforts. And certainly we were very inspired by what you were doing, Jeff. So thank you. And we're we're probably going to work with some of your text really on your police notification processes. Many people in the US are very afraid to go to the police because the police are famous over here for straitjacketing people and taking them straight to psych wards. Happens all the time. So it's so corrupt.
The 50, hence, like I said, find out whether, look at our example. We're going to film this. So this is an experiment, and we're going to be uploading it on the 7th of the 8th. We are going to be going with all of us TIs. We're going to be saying the same thing. So if they start saying that we're suffering from mass delusion, this is going to be quite problematic for them. But a way to do this is to build links between TIs in where you are, and then going together and saying the same thing. Now, I think this is the first time this has ever happened around the world that I know of, that a group of TIs, and I hope a substantive group of TIs, we're hoping for double figures on this, we're going to go down to New Scotland Yard and report organised stalking. Now, clearly they cannot. It would be ludicrous, asinine for them to say that we'd all suffering from a joint delusion. So what's left for them is it's either real or there's a conspiracy, that we're lying deliberately for some political motive. Or there's a mass delusion, so they start losing the reason. So this is why it's going to be very interesting, and I can bet you right now in think tanks around the country, from GCHQ to the Home Office, they're thinking, how are we going to scupper this? Because the hypergame theory, one of the things is how are they going to scupper this? How are they going to do this. So it's going to be
How are they
interesting
going
to
to
see
turn
how.
this around? You see, as it is, they're already sitting there. Their entire PR team is sitting there and watching us and going, how are we going to take these two and this video that they're doing and the way that they're talking, and how are we going to,
Yeah,
turn it around and try to con people and sile people into understanding that these people are delusional? How are we going to do it? Because they seem so credible. Now we really have
it's
to
going
turn it around. How do we do it? See, this is what they do on and on and on. They've spent their lives doing it. They're spending our taxpayers' money doing this. They need to be stamped out of existence. And I think most intelligent people who have half a brain in their heads can see that what we are reporting and what we are talking about is the absolute truth. And it's time to
yeah.
wake up to the perfidy of the intelligence agencies and the military and start stopping them, stopping this idiocy.
Yeah. And to force them to behave in a ridiculous manner and getting them to behave like tyrants, because they are going to try something and they will keep going down to ever increasing ludicrous reasons. But that's great because the ones on the mid-level who are on the fence, if they are told, okay, we can't think of anything plausible to mitigate what this demonstration. So they've all drunk poisoned water. They've all been hit by localized LSD. Now that's great for them to use some sort of ludicrous thing, because then that puts the people on the mid-levels thinking, I'm not going to say this. So the more that you do, it always keeps working. There are always positive elements to it, because even though they may try and shut it down, they lose the narrative, they lose the integrity, which marginalizes their own people, because their own people are called to ask, called to say and explain things which make them look stupid. So all you get left are the idiots, because the good people start to think, I am not going to say this, or feel so incredibly
Or be
uncomfortable, which is
involved in it. The good people,
all
if there are
missing.
good people in Intel.
So it polarizes. This is what happens. There's lots of kind of things about the goats and the sheep going on the left and the right. This is what's happening now. It's becoming polarized, because to be involved with this, with all the heat that's going on about it, you've got to be a true believer or an utter moron who wants to people please, or you're a good person. So there are divides going down, which is why the more we do, the more we force them into behaving where they have to think about their behavior, the more we win. The worst thing is sitting at home on your computer doing nothing other than that. Again, podcasts and video stuff, it's a binary weapon, so that I can report back to Ramola, I can send a video to Ramola and say this is what happened, so people in other parts of the world can learn from what we're doing. So on Wednesday, let's see what happens when double figure TIs go and report to New Scotland Yard, the chief the overt police power in the land, and say organised stalking is going on. It's going on in our communities, and any way that, and in anything that is going on, the prevent scheme or whatever name you've got for it is being abused, and we demand, you've got a duty of care to investigate the operating procedures of the people doing this, because we believe they are abusing any mandate, any license they've got. So let's see what happens on Wednesday, and I bet you if you walk past MI5 building tonight, the lights are going to be on till pretty late.
I think so. I think they're going to have to work out overtime. And, they're not going to be able to wriggle out of this one. What they've been doing, what they've been pulling on the world for quite a while now, they're not going to be able to live down. I predict that. I predict their downfall, with absolute certainty. It's either us
No,
or
it's not.
them. And trust me, it's been them so far. And it's time for us to rise and for them to go
Oh,
down, because
they're going.
they've been behaving like criminals. End of story.
Yeah, they know
So,
they're going.
on that very positive note, perhaps we should think of bringing this broadcast to an end. Once more, ask people to come out, support Jeff in front of
Please.
Parliament, 12 noon, 7th Feb, and do film it, and we'll play a recording the
Yeah.
next time that we meet to
Please,
show
people,
people what happened.
bring banners, bring cameras. We need as many cameras as possible. So if something does go down, we've got multiple angles. We can really catch them. And again, I'm like an intelligence analyst. I'm kind of licking my lips on this, because I'm kind of thinking, what are they going to do?
What can they do anymore? Seriously, I mean, this is it. We have actually the law on our side. they are, I don't know, they seem to be trying to run under color of law, but literally everything that they have done to those who are targeted and those who are being surveilled and monitored is literally, it seems to me, criminal because they are assaulting people's bodies and assaulting people's brains. Though that's battery, assault, calculated trafficking, etc., etc. So, all good. It's going to come to an end. It's all being exposed. The truth is coming out. It's coming to an end. And these are the steps. These are the ways in which we're doing it. So go out and join Jeff next
It's
week.
not false hope. It's not false hope. I don't get it. I don't get involved in lost causes. I'm telling you, they're going down. They're losing the narrative. The criminal private contractors are starting to go off safari, off range. This is going to happen. Keep pushing. Believe it's going to end. And I said, join us. Get out. Don't be scared of these people. You know, you're going to get threatened. You're going to get hit if you come out. But make a choice. Are you going to be microwaved to death and get cancer and see everything destroyed? And what about your grandkids? Because they got to, because you backing down, you're ensuring the enslavement of your grandchildren and your children. So this one's for the species. We've got to go for it, and this is the year. And if you just push a little bit, I'm telling you, first-hand experience, there are people who are in the system who want to help, but we've got to go first.
Wonderful. Very inspiring, Jeff. Thank you so much for all of that inspiring revving up of the populace. We really need to stand behind you, and all of us, kind of take a leaf out of your book and do what you were doing. So, on that note, perhaps, thanks very much for joining me this morning, Jeff. Thanks for, being so fiery and impassioned as you are, and for really bringing everything you have and are to this fight, as I think I have figured out we all need to do, really, at this point. We kind of need to bring ourselves wholeheartedly to the scenario and the situation and start speaking
Yeah.
out with absolute, unflinching courage and intention in order to change the situation around, because it's not going to change otherwise.
No, but there's a real opportunity for it to change because there's a lot of wavering people that are ready to come over to our side. And again, if everybody, there's no more spectator. I mean, genocide is not selective. Okay, at some point you're going to get hit, and you are being hit. So there's no, you got to get off the bench on this one. This is for all the marbles. This is the time, one of the most important times in human experience, and you've got a chance now to influence how things are going to go for a very long time in the future. And this garbage cannot be allowed to get the upper hand. These people hurt children. These people hurt all the vulnerable in society. These people are genuinely very, very disturbed individuals who you cannot let have any type of say over a society in which your grandchildren live. And so now there's still a window. We can still change things, and I believe things are starting to go our way. So please come out. If you've never been out before, if you've been intimidated, come and stand with us. There's a whole support network. You can get our phone numbers. I'm happy to talk to anybody, do aftercare, speak with people, but you've got to get into the fight because it's not a hobby fighting this. They want to kill us. They want to kill Ramola.
Yes.
They want to kill. So this is not a hobby. It's not a game. It can't, which I'm sure people understand. But what I'm saying is, it's not next year. It's now. It's next Wednesday, 7th of February. It's now. Come out. Let's have 50 TIs holding banners outside Parliament saying, "I am a victim of organised stalking. Do something."
Fabulous. Did you want to give your email address or any other information, or should we put it
Yeah,
below the video?
no, yeah, I mean, I believe in total disclosure. There's no such thing as anonymity or privacy. I don't care. It is, you've got to be open about this. My email is Jeff Godwin, which is JEFFGODWIN at startmail.com. STARTMAIL.com. So Jeff Godwin at startmail.com, and my phone number is 0750582003038. 8. I do not hide. I don't believe in anonymity or privacy. I'm doing nothing wrong. They're the ones, and the more they interfere with my communications, great. That's more evidence. That's more fingerprints that they're going to be hung with. Again, I do not fear these people. I do not run from these people. I do not hide from these people. These people are going to need to start doing that very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Jeff, for all of that information. And the point that you made just now, I just wanted to underline, it's that I think we've all figured out at this point, these are kill programs. They are putting people under surveillance and they are trying to kill them. And to understand why they're trying to kill them, you've got to understand the whole context of Agenda 21, global depopulation, and the takeover and transhumanizing of humanity. And this is why I come back to that larger context. And I'm increasingly coming back to it now because I see how important it is to convey to everybody that, these people have been put under surveillance and are being killed. But that circle of people under surveillance is increasing. It's increasing and increasing and increasing. And if you want to give these people the power to kill other people, to kill people like Jeff or kill people like me, then you will do nothing. But if you wake up and recognize that killing Jeff and killing me is the first step to killing you, then you might wake up and do something. And that's what we are asking you to do, really. We are literally, the gloves are off at this point in time. We are literally telling the world populace, wake up, because this is a kill program. It's a genocide program. It's not just eugenics, it's genocide. It's total takeover of humanity and transhumanizing and robotizing. We're on the lip of a complete transformation of humanity that they are envisioning. We're talking about lunatic psychotics, psychotic, deluded psychopaths who think that they have the right to control and transmogrify and transform humanity into cyborgs for their will and pleasure. And who are they? They are the people running the pedophile rings. To bring it down to earth. So, this is why we've got to jump in and we've all got to do something. So do something, please. Everyone who's watching, do something. Join Jeff. There are other ways in which we're both going to be putting out, campaign information, and join all of these campaigns. Do something.
Yeah, great stuff. Again, I think this is the first, those scenes out of Braveheart, the battle. I feel a lot of the demonstrations we've had have been dry runs. I think this is the seventh. Is when we got a bit more, we've got a sizable contingent with us, and this is not going to be able to be ignored. Biggest demonstration so far in the United Kingdom to expose. If you want to do something, here it is for you. All you've got to do is turn up. We will protect you when you are there, but also a warning, anybody who turns up and tries to marginalize the demonstration, starts taking off their clothes or talking about violence or hurting people, you're not welcome. We don't want anybody who's going to come down and be violent or aggressive or confrontational in a negative way. This is something that's going to be abrasive but inclusive.
Wonderful. Yes, it's got to be the kind of demonstration that really projects intelligent people coming together and speaking out, and just that. No taking off your clothes and running about in public and making an ass of yourself, etc., etc. So in any case, sorry?
That comes after in the pub or when you come back to my place.
All right.
No.
Yeah. Get in touch with Jeff.
No, I'm teetotal. I don't drink.
Oh, good. That's very smart of you. All right, Jeff. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I think we've literally been peeling back the layers of targeting over here, and we've been kind of running a kind of a techno-crime fighters forum for the UK together over here.
That's why I'm trying to point to that side, and we need to get some more UK. We'll try and get some. I'll talk to some people on Wednesday, and we'll try and get a few people that have a good understanding and communicate together.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that can be the next show. That's brilliant. Yes. So in any case, so thank you so much for joining me this morning. Thanks for all of your great information. As usual, your impassioned and fiery, inspiring, way of looking at things, your perspective, and your exhortation to everybody to just get off their couches and do something, please, because we are trying to save humanity here together. So everybody, wake up. And on that note, thanks very much for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.